Hi, I'm Bob Gimlin, and today I want to talk about 3 pieces of footage. They are worth going over because there is a very distinct possibility that the clips are of creatures that you won't find described in any current field guide. The clips come from Mr. M.K. Davis. I don't know much about Mr. Davis, and I don't really need to. He has said just as much and as little as he'd like to say about himself, and I respect that. Davis either resides on or has access to a, quote, working farm in the deep south. This property that he surveils is an alleged example of Bigfoot habitation. Before I show the first clip, I want to make a note about the film quality in regards to the resolution and definition of the clips. No, the footage was not filmed by a potato, but all 3 clips are filmed before sunrise, so there is very little light. If you're disappointed that the footage doesn't look like this, please note that the camera that took this footage costs around $1,500 and is being assisted by lighting, as evidenced by the noticeable shadows cast by the tree trunks. The camera that took Davis's film was not assisted by artificial lighting, and there are multiple cameras in use at any given time, so each one likely did not cost thousands of dollars. So the quality of the footage is not a deciding factor in the authenticity of the footage, as far as I'm concerned. This is the first clip. The creature is in frame for about 1.5 seconds, so Davis has jogged the clip back and forth. Not what you immediately expect from Bigfoot footage. The creature is on all 4s, crawling. Not the typical Bigfoot or Sasquatch profile, but very much what you would expect from a creature that is cognizant of evasive practices, which is what Davis believes we're seeing. Look at how straight the subject's back is. Very mountain gorilla-esque. And of course that coned head. I'll show some comparisons later, but bear and deer should really taper forward into snouts and round out at the rear. And that's just not what we're seeing here. Davis even notes some anatomical features that kind of negate the idea of this being a hoax or a costume. Davis called this footage the junk man. If this isn't why, it should be. Sometime later, Davis applied better software to the film and came up with this. Look at how easily it trots, on all 4s. A very great ape-like stance. Of course, with that iconic great ape conical head. This creature seems quite comfortable moving the way it is, getting its hind feet way up there, beneath its chest. But why is it on all 4s to begin with? Primates exhibit this behavior of transitioning between bipedalism and quadrupedalism, depending on the situation. Like this chimp who doesn't want to damage his fruit, or these juveniles who need some extra emotional support, or this baboon who isn't keen on getting its nether regions wet, or this gorilla who is minimizing her exposed surface area while getting out of the rain. So if the habitually quadrupedal known apes transition to bipedal locomotion on a situational basis, then there is no reason to doubt that a habitually bipedal ape would transition to quadrupedalism in certain situations. And no, I don't think they are mimicking bear. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that the lower you are to the ground, the less information you are providing to observers, just as humans attempt to do when trying to reduce vulnerability. This is a bear running. Look how curved it is. Far more circular to the rear, and its head and snout taper forward, rather streamlined, whereas this creature's head is squarely arranged on the shoulders facing up. This upwardly arranged head is far more consistent with something that habitually spends a great deal of time on 2 legs. The bear is round to the rear with a lower center of gravity and tapers and slenders forward to that pointed snout, contrasting the girth of the rear. And that's simply not what we're seeing in Davis's footage. This is something with long legs and an upward-facing head, something that Davis called the junk man. Here is a chimpanzee running. Look at that straight back, and how it pulls itself forward with its arms. Now please don't think I'm using this as a size comparison of any kind. That's not my role or function here. If indeed Sasquatch exist and can mature at 10 feet tall and push 800 pounds, then at some point they are every weight and height below that. See how both the film subject and the chimp's head stop abruptly? It just doesn't slender out to the front, like most things large on all fours do. Nothing at all like the bear. On the subject of stills, no one is immune to pareidolia, or perceiving patterns and images that aren't really there. But I almost make out a protruding brow ridge in this still. Sunken eyes beneath a prominent brow. And in this clip, and this still, that sure looks like a face to me. Maybe I've just been looking at this far too late into the night. Or perhaps it's exactly what it looks like. Here is a gorilla. I'm certainly not asserting that Bigfoot should be identical to the known great apes. In fact, Bigfoot obviously must be quite different. But they are the best analog we have, in my opinion. This creature doesn't rely as heavily on its arms as the known apes, which is indicative of a biped, and supported by that vertically oriented head. While I'm at it, I want to take a moment to recognize just how strong these creatures are. Very, very strong. Did you happen to catch what triggered the gorilla's charge in the first place? See what the little girl is doing? Slapping her chest like an ape. As someone who has spent a good deal of time observing captive primates, I can tell you that we are constantly communicating with them, even when we don't mean to be. Start laughing, and they want to know what you are reacting to. Begin arguing with a coworker, and they are already deciding whose side they're on, and if they need to get involved. Short of the spoken word, we very much speak the same language. Or similar, at least. If the primate's reflexive response and reaction time is indeed so much faster than our own, as studies suggest, then the ability to accurately read facial expressions of humans and our physical posturing would be invaluable to a North American primate's attempt to remain cryptic. Do you think something exponentially smarter than a chimp needs to explicitly understand what a gun does? It knows that face, and it knows it never ends in something good. I don't believe that even the most venerable and open-minded field experts have truly grasped just how smart these creatures are, and just how much smarter something close to it may be, and the edge that would give them. Anyhow, I don't think this creature is moving terribly fast. I doubt speed is the priority of the creature in this clip, because Bigfoot should be faster on two legs. Gorilla have been clocked at 20 miles per hour and chimpanzee at 25 miles per hour, while the fastest recorded human sprint is just under 28. But I don't think that necessarily means that humans are the fastest of the large primates. Wild animals only move at top speed when there is something they want in front of them, or something they really don't want behind them. It's impossible to tell just how fast a chimp can sprint without a leopard at its heels. Your typical gorilla or chimp is still much faster than even skilled runners that we would define as fast. A controlled sprint like this is a highly unnatural situation, and we likely have been unable to persuade a great ape to participate in such a controlled and manufactured trial. It can be difficult to get them to play our games. And though great apes are certainly faster than 99% of humans in 99% of situations, humans far surpass the known quadrupeds in endurance performance. That is no contest, because moving on two legs is vastly less energy intensive than moving on all fours. That's why when humans go on all fours, it's usually for the purposes of exercise. And it makes sense that a bipedal primate, such as humans and other, would be designed for endurance, covering great distances, through well-versed routes. This creature is going for stealth, not speed. But I'll get more into that with the next clips. Because of the upward-facing head, like a person on all fours, as well as at least the appearance of being less reliant on the arms than the quadrupedal apes, I assert that this creature is habitually a biped. So then the question must be asked, why is it not simply a person? A comment on Davis's channel claims that you can observe a straight line down the foot, and that it is clearly a boot. Well, these creatures would indeed have large, flat feet, and boots do have a tendency of being shaped like feet. And in this close-up, you can almost make out how it curves inward, which is to me indicative of a flexible foot shifting to a more acute angle as the gravity of the foot rise weighs down upon it. And if you look at this clip, here of the chimp running, where the chimpanzee's foot comes up and the light reflects the palm, it looks an awful lot like this enhancement of the clip, with the small amount of ambient light reflecting the palm. And look how it gets that hind foot way up there. I'm not sure if we're looking at knuckle walking. Monkeys and more arboreal primates walk on the palms of their hands. Palm walking provides balance, grip, and stabilization for locomoting on uneven surfaces, such as branches and tree trunks. While knuckle walking essentially creates a hoof, which is more durable with a greater capacity to absorb impact, the impact of larger bodies, which the terrestrial primates tend to possess. If the creature described as Bigfoot or Sasquatch is as human-like as many people seem to think, then it likely isn't knuckle walking, as humans of all gradients are so far and beyond any type of knuckle walking. Personally, I think we are seeing knuckle walking because this is a creature that enjoys the best of both worlds, the function and physicality of an ape, but perhaps the awareness or thoughtful capacity closer to the human side of things. And it is very difficult for even the most skilled human sprinters to begin with a straight back, parallel to the ground, as we see with the film subject. Humans don't do nearly so well on all fours. We tend to look much more squat while moving, like these kids playing leapfrog. The dominance of our legs in comparison to our arms puts us at various angles, whereas the subject here seems to move fluidly in that box shape, evenly distributing its weight between its legs and arms, while humans need to rely more so on one or the other. When our backs are straight, we just can't get our legs way up there to move like that. That's why the workout known as mountain climbers are particularly unpleasant. These clips of primates, be it gorilla, chimp, or other, represent animals less dependent on legs for locomotion than humans. Honestly, if I was a primatologist trying to verify if some kind of primate inhabited a certain region of mid-Africa, and my research yielded this, I would with few reservations be convinced that a large primate did in fact frequent the area. Descriptions of something primatological have come out of North America since the first Europeans arrived, and long before that. And this seems to be something distinctly primatological. It really only was a matter of time before one of these things crossed paths with someone like this. Someone curious and sensible enough to document the occurrences themselves. And the findings that person would yield, if any at all, would probably look a lot like the footage that Davis has. Davis dubbed the next clip the Creek Crosser. Again, low lighting. The sun had just begun to rise. In the middle of the screen, where the two trees make a V, you're going to see something large, dark, and upright meander into view. Here's the clip a few more times. I left the audio on, so you know when it's repeating. Then the creature descends into a deep creek bed, It takes a few strides at a diagonal. Its head appears as it passes through the ditch. Then it scales the embankment and is on its way. That was easy to miss, so I'm going to play Davis's enhanced version, where he follows it with his cursor. This is where you first see something that is definitively something. Then it descends into a creek bed. You can see its head bobbing, visible over the embankment as it crosses at a diagonal. And then it pulls itself up and is gone. Home before sunrise. Obviously, the 2.5 pixels that make up this creature are not all that impressive. But consider that the embankment it goes up is the same embankment opposite Davis in this photo. And Davis is standing at where the creature's head bobs up, at least his best approximation, putting the creature at a bare minimum of 6.5 feet tall, at the absolute very least, conservatively, one head higher than Davis. Potentially much larger, depending on how far down the slope it was walking. And the side opposite from Davis, that's the side it scaled up, which at least looks like a formidable movement. Look at how quickly it goes from in the ditch to upright. This is what Bigfoot looks like, in my opinion. Something tall and strong crossed that creek, and it looks comfortable doing so. A lot of Davis's purported evidence is ambiguous, but I imagine that this is very much what you'd expect an amateur's result to look like. And if you consider that Davis already knows what is out there, for reasons unfilmed, then these pixels become far more telling. See the creature's head in the ditch? It's down there, and then ascends the side opposite from Davis in this photo. So quickly. That's a fast, strong, and fluid motion. To get out of that ditch. If you decide to visit his channel, do not go into it expecting to find documentation of Bigfoot. Go into it expecting to find one man's attempt to document something that is obviously extremely difficult to document. He is not doing what he is doing on the off chance that these creatures exist and are on the property. He is doing this to document what he is already aware of. That's why his excitement intensifies over his relatively mundane result. He's just excited they entered the frame. As am I. And the part that boggles my mind is that he has to manually review every second from every camera from every night. Review the countless hours of footage, eyes peeled for something as minute as this. Real time, because I'm not sure you would catch this if it was fast-forwarded. Davis certainly believes it's worth the trouble. This is something large and upright. And Davis is not aiming the cameras randomly into the night. He is aiming them at where he has concluded some type of elusive creature is. And he gets footage of some type of elusive creature. Imagine that. The final clip from Davis that I want to mention is one of the alleged creatures being pursued by a hunter. And I think it's beneficial to understand this scenario through the hunter's perspective. You're going to see a hunter enter the frame, in pursuit of the film subject. He was part of an organized hunt with a group when he followed something onto the property that Davis monitors. This hunter had to cross wire fencing and clear signage stating that beyond the fence is private property and that trespassing will be enforced. The hunter sees the game cam, surely realizing that he is now recorded committing at best a misdemeanor and at worst a felony. But he doesn't care. He wants to know what he's following. Then the hunter appears in the frame of this camera. I know you can barely see it, but Davis has oscillated it back and forth. On the left side, you can see that blur. That's not the creature, that's the hunter. That Davis has jogged back and forth, moving left to right, as he continues onward. Then minutes later, he reappears in frame of the first camera, exiting the property the way he came. Either he is running to minimize his time in frame of the camera which he clearly saw, or perhaps he is reconsidering the wisdom of his pursuit in the first place. But the clip of interest comes from the camera where you can see that indistinct blur of the hunter. You can tell the sun is coming up fast because there is so much more light in this clip, even though less than a minute has passed. Something walks down the creek bed, toward the camera. It peeks out of the ditch, like a periscope. It's still for a moment. Then it ascends the slope, appears to drop down on all fours, and is off. Now I'm going to loop it from where it is peering out of the ditch, until it goes up and away. What are we looking at? The creature slipped its pursuer. It outmaneuvered him, and safely goes in a direction that is neither the hunter's course nor the hunter's retreat. I know this quality leaves much to be desired, but the words elude me to precisely describe why this looks so Bigfoot-esque. It really ungulates as it trots. When it rises from the creek bed, it sure seems to be on its rear legs. And then it seems to fall to all fours, or something close to it. The way it moves looks rather similar to how the creature moved in the first clip. Only here it is coming straight at the camera, instead of from the profile. I don't know if it's moving the same way, but its pattern sure seems similar. How it almost seems to be pulling itself forward with its arms, not kicking to push itself forward. From when I first saw Davis's footage some 5 years ago, up until this point, I would not have realized the difference of casually watching a clip like this every once in a while versus focusing on it for hours on end. Davis loses people when he goes on to discuss anomalies that superficially appear to be little to nothing at all. But think how many hours that total into how many days he has spent scrutinizing this type of footage. Remember, he has to manually review all the footage these cameras take. I have no doubt that Davis has missed more than most will ever get. And this clip to me is very telling about the alleged creature's behavior. The evasive action it took. From the time of the hunter's blur to the time you see the creature is not a long period of time, only a matter of seconds. The hunter was at one point at least 50 feet away from the creature, potentially much closer. It did not carelessly and chaotically sprint away, leaving an obvious trail. It put some distance between itself and the hunter, and then it hunkered down. So the hunter continues forward into nowhere, and the creature waits for the hunter to remove himself from the area before it removes itself from the area. This reminds me of a witness I spoke with who had a rock lobbed at his bass boat in a swamp in Georgia. What most disturbed him was how he was surrounded by standing water all around any conceivable rock throw. Yet he heard no noise. That creature was patient. It waited for the fishermen to leave the area, not the other way around. These creatures seem to prefer a patient withdrawal over a hasty retreat. They understand the board and the limitations of each piece. And this is what primates do. They are very capable of hypothesizing or foreseeing an individual's next move, and therefore are able to plan their own accordingly. See how he fakes them out? Looks over his shoulder so the tourists try to follow his line of sight, so they aren't looking at his hand. Just a minuscule example of the awareness that these creatures have for such things. Non-human primates have the capacity to perceive time more rapidly than humans do. This rapid response in perception may result from the intensity that accompanied swinging from trees. This edge is incalculable. I'd imagine their decision process is largely complete by the time a witness even comprehends what it is or isn't that they are seeing. And the alleged unverified North American primate's description certainly has the physicality to enact that superior reflex to a devastating result in regard to trying to film them, much less run them down. Essentially, imagine playing tag, only we are in slow motion compared to their perception of time and space. That's just one reason why, even in this allegedly advanced and civilized age, these creatures continue to elude us. I usually stray away from video analysis because it is not, never will be, and should not be considered proof of anomalous bipeds in North America and other parts of the world. But if you accept the rather compelling argument for these creatures, then likely this is a Sasquatch. Even if tomorrow a Bigfoot on this property steps on a landmine that Davis set up, and Davis personally wheelbarrows the body's bits and pieces straight into the doors of the Smithsonian, that still doesn't identify what we're seeing in these frames. But if you consider that different civilizations, separated by hundreds if not thousands of years, have different names for the same thing, and that thing was on this guy's land, then this is exactly what we should expect to see. One man's initiative. Anyhow, MK, if you ever get around to seeing this, please let me know if anything I have said is a misrepresentation. If so, please know that it was out of ignorance, not deception. I have been fascinated by your knowledge and discipline for years now. And as far as knowledge on this subject is concerned, you stand among few others. Anyway, like the video, subscribe to keep updated, and as always, thanks an awful lot for listening. And I thank you for your time.